Well, good afternoon. Thank you for giving us your time today. As David said, my name is Amy Lineback, and we are blessed to work with David and his company at Alpha Media in our 7 radio stations. But in media, we are no longer just the medium that we started with. We're no longer just radio. We are now a full digital company in addition to being radio. So when we had the opportunity to come today and provide some learnings, we took advantage of it because it's always great to educate people on what's going on in media. So, and I'm smart enough to know that I don't need to be the person to talk about this, and I bring in the people who are smarter than I am and have them do the teaching. So that's why today we have both Tony and Mark. And after I introduce them, I'm going to step down and eat lunch and listen to these guys. So anyway, on my left is Tony Howard. Tony Howard is our interactive sales manager. He actually has a long history in media. He worked in television in this market, and he also most recently worked for a company called Clip Interactive. It was our mobile app provider for a lot of years, and we were fortunate enough to hire Tony about 4 or 5 months ago to come and work for Alpha Media. So Tony lives here in Portland, and he works with our clients on regional campaigns that are focused on digital campaigns. Mark Landon is with Recrew Media. Recrew Media is our partner that we work with at Alpha Media to execute regional and national digital campaigns. And Mark is one of the smartest guys I know in terms of digital media, and I've learned a ton from him. Sorry, Tony. I mean, you're one of them, but he's really smart. It's probably because he got his MBA from Pepperdine. That's probably why. So anyway, Mark actually lives in LA, and he runs the company there. Prior to working for Recrew Media, he was the president of Matthews Marketing, which was a newspaper sales and marketing company, and he also was a sales director for the LA Times. So they're a wealth of knowledge, and because I come from radio, I would be remiss if we didn't give away a prize, because we love giving away prizes in radio. And so I do have a one-night stay in a suite at the Tolovana Inn to give away if anyone wants to provide their business card. So I will pass around a little basket. If you want to throw it in there, then I'll do a little drawing, and I'll notify you via email if you're the winner. So with that, I will hand it off to Tony and Mark.
How's everybody doing? Good? Good. Thank you guys for giving us the time to do this. I think what we're talking today is relevant for just about everybody, but I would imagine that a lot of what you guys do is a B2B approach. So this is going to be a nice way to describe the digital landscape and how to really simplify it and take, instead of getting really tactical about and getting in the minutia that can get a lot of people confused and glazed over, we're going to talk about what it's really doing, which is really just managing audiences. So, and this is Mark? Yeah. Mark? Yeah. So with the first slide, what this is really showing is that advertisers vote with their dollars, right? So you're seeing a 20-year span here almost of how media has trended. And you're looking at all traditional media from newspaper up and all the colored, and the digital media is taking up 62% now, or will be in 2020, of the entire landscape. That's over, all of those put together above you. So we know that if you're not in that landscape and you're not doing it effectively, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. Now, all of that being said, when you're trying to really be effective in any kind of advertising and marketing, you want to have a combination of 2 or 3 of these things. So it's not to say that it's replacing any of these other mediums. It's just to say that when you're looking at how your money is distributed, take stocks, right? You want to put a good portion of it toward digital media.
So that's a complicated space, right? Digital is a big pie. It's search, it's site development, it's display, video, mobile, it's email, it's all of those things. So that 62 represents a big bucket. And the question really is, how do you deal with it, right? How do you walk through a digital process, a plan, and so on, so that you don't get lost, right? There's the spray and pray analogy, right? You just hope you hit something out there. And actually, that's kind of what a lot of people do, right? Around the room here, by the way, how many people have actually tried running their own digital programs? How many, right? Okay, some, right? It's not easy. It's pretty complicated. So that's what we're going to try and do here today, is show you a way of staying focused on what matters. So you don't get lost in in the product area. You focus on a process that you can win with. And we call that process audience management, right? And if you focus on audience management, what we're really getting at is saying we want to define the audience we want to reach first, right? Don't worry about product. Don't worry about whether you know digital or not. Define that audience. Because the nice thing you can do with digital is package audiences in really unique ways. And once you have them packaged, it becomes very easy to reach them. And that's the challenge of digital, is staying very tightly focused on that audience that matters. You actually already have that audience. Most of the data you actually already have on your own, okay? And if you follow that process, as you see, once you organize who that audience is, it's really about building your data behind that, getting good at working with that particular data group, and then you perfect that process, optimize that process, and so on. So that's what audience management is. It's a process to guide the decisions you make as you're executing a digital program and generating the results that correspond to that.
Yeah, great. So for audience management, this is something in radio we've been doing for a long time, right? We're trying to decide, first we're getting data back on who our listeners are in radio, and we've got these buckets of people sort of divided up based on the format that we deliver. So that's the challenge for us, is to be able to deliver that audience in an effective way to any advertiser. And that's obviously the potential customer of the advertiser. And if you think about the local radio stations, your recall is right away when you say anything. I'm going to just use our call letters, KINK, right? Kink Radio. You know immediately that gives you a vision of what that is. There's your audience, right? So that's all we're trying to do, is define the audience, stack those audiences on top of each other, and just manage the whole thing in a way that's going to make whatever you're doing in a digital way very, very effective.
Yeah. So you've got websites, and you've got an audience coming to your website every day. All right, how you manage that becomes really the key part of it. So we're going to cover 5 areas today, and you can see them up there. All right, and there's a lot we could cover, right? But if we keep it focused here, it'll stay pretty relevant. It's first-party data, retargeting, social media, mobile and display. And I'll bet you've done most of that yourselves already, or you're a user of all of most of those particular services. So let's start with first-party data and why that's relevant, okay? First-party data is the data you put in, okay? Everybody here have a LinkedIn page or a Facebook page? You put that data in. And when you put that data in, you just made that data available for guys like us to sit and make sure we reach you with the ads that are going to be relevant to you. First-party data works better than any other kind of data because it's real. You put it in, so when we're communicating with you, we know the message is relevant to you, okay? Things like retargeting do that. Social media does that. Mobile location targeting does that. Third-party data is a different kind of data. It's model data, and it supposes who you are. It's useful, but it's not as good in a performance program as first-party data will be. So when you're building a campaign, you want to build from first-party data as much as you can before you extend into the third-party market. We'll show you how that gets done. So let's start with retargeting, right? Retargeting is really the foundation of audience management, okay? Retargeting is very simple. Retargeting is when you go to a website and it puts a cookie on your computer, and then you leave, you go to other sites, say CNN, Wall Street Journal, and that ad appears from that advertiser site you've just been to. Has everybody experienced that? Over and over and over. It's the most common practice of digital, and it's common because it works. Retargeting is what drives all conversion activity. Retargeting is what allows us to organize an audience into the appropriate buckets so we can deliver ads to them. But what we know is the fact that if they came to your site in the first place, what's the likelihood that they're interested in you? Well, it's pretty good, right? Especially when you think about the kind of businesses you're all in, right? People don't just come to your websites accidentally. They're coming to your websites because they're typically going to be interested in the product or service with which you're involved, okay? So the quality of that audience is great because it's your audience. And the trick is, how do I engage my audience and how do I speak with them first, right? If they came to your site, you want to engage them in communication by directing ads to them.
You know, it's no different than walking down the street. You know, as a business owner, you're not talking to everybody in Pioneer Square and saying, you want to do business with me? You want to do business with me? Right? I mean, you've managed your audience already. You know the most efficient audiences to go to first. And it's no different with the digital landscape. You're just using a little bit of different tactics and platforms to reach them.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So retargeting beyond your site, like Mark just talked about, we're talking about putting a cookie somewhere that we can follow that person and continue to talk to them as they move through the web, right? But there's a lot of value in being able to talk to the audience you already know exists. For us in radio, KXL, we've got it up there as an example. There's an audience. We know who that audience is. It's how we sell the radio station. When we sell it to advertisers, we can tell them what kind of person listens to that radio station. Well, if that aligns with your business, then as a result, you can take, and anybody that's visited that KXL website, you can also retarget to them, knowing that that is another piece of your audience. Just another layer in the stack.
And even if we put CCIM up there, not that they do this, but wouldn't it be interesting if you could retarget your ad to the people in the room right here, right? You all do business together. Wouldn't that be useful? So retargeting is about keeping your message directed to people who are relevant to you, right? Their prospects or their customers and so on. So retargeting is the baseline. And the beauty of retargeting for you is this. It's cheap. It's really cheap, right? Because it's only as big as the number of cookies that have been placed out there. It's not like you're reaching the entire Portland DMA or the Northwest region. It's only people that have visited your site. So it's very compact, very relevant to you, and inexpensive to execute on that plan, okay? So that's where you begin. That's where you start with the audience you know.
On a side note, again, really there are no stupid questions. I know that we're saving these, trying to save these to the end, but this is a world that we live in all the time, Mark and I, and often we'll see a room full of people, and then the questions come when you're out in the parking lot. I didn't want to ask this in front of everybody else, but I think if you're confused or anything in here seems a little vague to you, there's probably a lot of people who are feeling the same way. So please, if it's pertinent and timely, definitely raise your hand now if you have to. Okay.
So that's retargeting. Next stage of it. Okay, and retargeting, first-party data. We're going to stay on the first-party data theme here, and we're going to move over to social, all right? Social becomes incredibly useful. This is where people spend time, right? Does everybody here have a Facebook profile page, right? Does everybody here have a LinkedIn profile page? All right, so you're all involved. You all get your news feeds, and you're probably all surprised by how relevant the advertising is that you typically get through your news feeds, all right? It's not an accident. It's the data you've put in that is allowing them to find you with a level of accuracy that's pretty impressive, okay? So let's start with Facebook. And I'm going to touch on the bottom part of this slide first because it becomes a really useful element. It's called custom audiences, okay? Now keep in mind, by the way, Facebook, as much as it is a social media site and so on, it's a data collection company. That's really what they are. They're a data collection company, and they manage massive, massive amounts of data, and they structure it very, very well, okay? So when we talk about how to use Facebook and your site together, there's something called a Facebook Insight tag. So when we run campaigns, we're going to take that Facebook Insight tag, all right? It's just a piece of code. You copy it, and you paste it into the HTML code of your website, right? When you do that, it begins to collect the data. The people that visit your site, it now matches to their Facebook profile. So you can take your exact website visitors and now retarget them directly while they're on their Facebook page, okay? That's pretty useful, right? Again, you know the audience you have, and now you're extending that audience to reach them in an environment like Facebook, okay? And we can do something else too, because Facebook, once we collect that data and they arrive on Facebook, all the data that's in their profile begins emerging and reports back to us, okay? So we can see what their interests are. We can see what their occupations are. We can see their behaviors and so on. So all those things you do in Facebook, you post a picture, or somebody sends you a picture, right? All those, the likes you make and so on. All of that data is being recorded to package you up into a relevant profile so we know something about who that audience actually is. Okay? You can also use things like email lists, right? How many of you maintain email lists and customer data on your own? That's really useful data because we can take those email lists or we can take data from your CRM system and we can move that into Facebook also, okay? And when we do that, once again, we can now direct ads to those people that we already know are the people who are interested in you. So you're never leaving an audience that's unfamiliar to you. You're never out there in the internet among sites you've never heard of and so on. You're staying totally relevant to the audience that you already know, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Want to take this?
Yeah. So essentially, we can build a profile for you based on that data, right? And this is a great example of this may or may not be, each individual target client, but in this case, we're going to say real estate for business, 25 to 65, and we know because of all the data that they've provided through the social media platforms that they could be real estate brokers, property management, property finder, all of these things that and ways that these people interact with the internet are provided to you because they provided it. Social media is a way to get data in no other way and be so specific with that data that we can build a profile for you, and this is the person we can target.
By the way, the other thing you'll notice is an Instagram up there. Facebook owns Instagram. So the same data sets that you have through Facebook are the same data sets you have through Instagram, right? So it doesn't matter where your audience goes. You follow them accordingly to whichever platform they happen to be on. And Instagram is fast growing as an e-commerce solution and so on. So it's not to be overlooked as, that's where my kid goes, right? It's a highly relevant site to everything that you're actually involved in. LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a B2B site. It's a social B2B site. For you and your business, very B2B oriented, it's a very powerful place to be, okay? It works a lot like Facebook actually does because you can develop profiles around the occupations and the interests of those people in terms of their employment, okay? And you can do something with them that's interesting as well. And they've got matched audiences on LinkedIn. This is going to sound very familiar, okay? You can pull from LinkedIn their matched audience or LinkedIn Insight tag. Once again, you copy it, take it over to your site, paste it into the HTML code of your own site, and now your site visitors begin pulling data from your LinkedIn profile, from their LinkedIn profiles. And you can retarget them when they're in LinkedIn, okay? So think about that. We start with your own site audience with retargeting. We match that to your visitors when they're in the Facebook environment, and now we match them again when they're in the LinkedIn environment. You've just scaled your audience up and expanded it without ever leaving the core audience group you have through your own site visitors, okay? So those matched audiences do something else. You can begin to see the data coming back that tells you who those people actually are, okay? Then we can retarget them. And then we can take other data you have, like email or CRM data and so on, and that all can be pushed into LinkedIn as well. You can upload up to 300,000 emails into LinkedIn in order to make them part of your audience group, okay? So all of that remains highly relevant and useful to you.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is interesting, right? This data is only important if you do, or irrelevant if you do nothing with it. So it's called an insight tag for a reason. So here's your insight, right? You've got the ability to kind of look at this feedback, and then maybe you are marketing just how this is laid out. Maybe you're not. So this is a great way to kind of bob and weave in those scenarios where you think your audience is this, and you're putting your marketing dollars in this way, and you come to find out the people that are literal fans of what you're doing and want to know more information are actually up in these top two categories. So it allows you to go, and I'm sorry because I can't, Yeah, so this is just giving, this is an example of Tulane University with the campaign, and it's giving feedback on who's interacting, right? It'd be important for them to know what category of job they've got: web specialist, marketing director, research. And then the next slide who is it, right? You know, are their education, are they, what field are they in, right? This is going to be important for you guys because depending on your business, you may not want to reach some of these people, or you may want to reach all of them, right? So, and then the next slide, you know, what level are they? For Tulane, you know, you can see that people going there, it's kind of obvious when you look at the data, but you've got entry-level people that are very interested in what Tulane's doing. And then you've got senior people too, right? Maybe for continuing education, who knows what the reasoning may be. But as far as the marketing's concerned, all of the dollars, in my mind, if I'm a marketer for Tulane, are going to be up on that top third of the data that you're getting back. I think that's...
You put in, you know, most of the content management systems, if you put it in the down by the footer, it'll copy right across all the pages. It is. It is. Exactly. Yep. Exactly right. Exactly right. And, you know, we've had examples, by the way, and it's pretty funny, you know, when you start sharing this data. You're going to find that you're reaching a lot more people than you probably realized, of diverse backgrounds and so on. We've had people that are literally marketing to one group when their audience is another. Their messaging was entirely wrong. You know, what's the value of having this data? It allows you to start thinking about, what is the message I want to put in my ad? Or is the page I bring people to actually relevant to what their interests are? And am I talking to my right audience at all, right? And that's what you begin to get through these things, is a way of improving the programs. You never write coming out of the chute. It's going to be a work in progress that requires development. And that's what this data begins to do, is reveal who is behind the visits that are coming to your website, so you can consistently improve and begin to develop programs that are more relevant to your audience all the time. Okay?
Yeah, just quickly, commercial real estate, I didn't actually touch on this slide, but you know, this would be extremely important information, I would think, as you're looking at who could potentially buy a property. You're looking at companies here based on, or you're looking at employee size, right? So that's probably very pertinent information. A really tiny company is probably less likely to buy one property as opposed to another. So, I mean, this data goes deep. You can go way down the rabbit hole if you really want to with this, and I would imagine it would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. So, how much digital conversation are you hearing here, by the way? Anything leaving you guys like, man, I don't understand that at all? Nope. It's pretty friendly, isn't it? This is just marketing. It's just audience. It's just advertising, right? It's so easy to complicate this. Yeah.
Well, yes it is, but it isn't.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty sophisticated. But the question I have is that I target people on my email list. I send something out to them, and then I send it out to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. And from that, they can then, if they're so interested in these various social media sites, they can say, yes, I like this, I'm going to get this free content, and they can sign up for it, or I provide them with some type of worksheet, spreadsheet, whatever they might find interesting. Does that kind of circumvent what you're doing there, or is it just something that's just another way of doing the same thing?
It's just another way. It's another way of doing the same thing when you get right down to it. I mean, the email list programs are fully productive, but you can merge those in to extend your reach beyond just those platforms too, if you want to. And we're going to touch on that here in a few anyway, because all the data you already have can be repurposed another way to deal with these environments, right? But if you're already in the Facebook environment and you're matching them up already, then you're largely doing exactly the same thing here, right? The trick is to just sort of get more of the data back, make your website more productive so you know who they are, and you continuously build towards that audience that A, you know, and then B, you got to go to the prospective audience too, so you can build new traffic, new customers, new prospects, and so on, okay?
And it's managing the data as well to come back and, like you had touched on, look at that data and really analyze it to say, this is where my opportunity is, where I can either where my opportunity is or where I need to invest more time to really have a cohesive, holistic digital plan. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, again, this is a lot like what I had gone over in Facebook. Based on all the data that we have back, we can build a profile again, and we can, build it on who is this person, right? They live in the Portland DMA, commercial real estate. That's their industry, right? The job titles, these are going to be important to make sure that you're getting the job titles of the people that are relevant. Maybe an administrative assistant isn't the person you want to reach if you're looking for somebody to invest. What's the job seniority? Of course, that's important. And then all the targeting opportunities that you're probably currently familiar with that you can do with a lot of platforms, which is location and the company name and the industry and what we had seen before, the company size. You can really go far with this to really kind of curate that audience so that you've got a lot of efficiency with what you're delivering and very little waste.
By the way, you see that form there and so on. It's the other key piece, right? Within the environments, Facebook and LinkedIn have great lead gen platforms, really good lead gen platforms, and the type of creative that drives that. So you can do form fills for signups, for newsletters, webinars, whatever you're engaged with. It's a very useful, it's great to have an endpoint, right? A goal to direct them to. The more you stay focused on those things and use those tools, the better the engagement you'll drive through the program. Okay. So we've built up the first-party data through your site. We've built up our first-party data through social. We're very focused on who we want to reach. We can go another direction now, and this probably would be a little bit new to you also. Mobile gives you the opportunity to target your ads by location, okay? And using location becomes a pretty relevant way of reaching an audience because it allows you the opportunity to identify phones, devices, and so on that are in the area you want to focus your message. So 2 parts about the way mobile works. One is geofencing. Now, we're taking a look here, by the way, and since we are here at CCIM, we took a look at, as a sake of demonstration, the CCIM convention that occurred in Chicago. Now, the people that would attend that would likely be relevant to you, right? Those would be people that would be representative of prospects, customers, and so on you'd want to talk to. So that was at the Swiss Hotel in Chicago last fall. Well, what we can do with mobile is take a location like that hotel during a conference, and we can draw a geofence around that, right? That'd be that red circle there. And we can, for the 4 days that conference goes on, buy up virtually every ad unit that goes into that building, okay? And you can saturate that audience with whatever message you want. And that's useful for the time that it happens, okay? Anybody outside that red circle does not get the ad. Anybody inside the circle is likely to receive the ad. So there's a couple ways of using conferences, trade type events where you can do saturation type programs. It goes on all the time. It's fairly useful towards that degree. Then there's a more advanced side of this, okay? And this is called mobile device ID collection, where we quite literally collect the device ID of the actual phones, right? And I'm pretty sure everybody here's got their phone with them, right? These are powerful little devices here, okay? And they all have, same as your car has a VIN number, these have a device ID number that are totally unique to that particular device. So what we can do is it's a process called polygoning. I don't even know why it's called polygoning, it's just called polygoning. And we can put a little border around that Swiss hotel location. And as soon as we put that border around it, we can begin identifying the device IDs that are in that location. And let's just assume that that hotel is loaded with everybody that's related to your industry over the course of those days. We can start pulling up all the device IDs. Think of it like a direct mail list or an email list. And that data stays with us. We can continue to use that data. And it's useful because it's very relevant to you, right? This is more of the audience that you actually want to reach. It's why colleges and universities, they polygon high schools. They already know who their feeder schools are, right? If you're Callaway Golf, where are you polygoning? Probably driving ranges, golf courses, and so on, right? This is a very common practice, very driven in the retail space today and so on, but it pertains to you because you can pull up the first-party data, that is the specific device related to the individual prospects you want, and deliver ads to them, whether they're here or when they leave Chicago and they've gone other places, we can continue to deliver ads to them wherever they are. So if somebody in Portland is in Chicago for the convention and you want to reach them when they're back in Portland, you've already got the device ID because now they're part of your audience group, okay? Now, quite literally, you can actually, once you draw a polygon, you can see the mobile device IDs that have been in that polygoned area going backwards 2 years, right? Now, why is that useful? Well, that's useful because you don't start building your audience on day one. You can start with a scaled audience immediately, okay? I wouldn't suggest going back 2 years, by the way. 3 months, 6 months, keep it relevant and so on, okay?
As far as that's what's called a look back. When we can go back in time and do that, you can be very creative with that and start to look for other conferences and areas that would relate to your industry where there's a high concentration of the people you're trying to reach. And like you said, if you wanted to go back 2 years, you could do that same conference and whatever dates that conference was the previous year and the previous year to that and grab all those device IDs. But even more powerful would be to take countrywide all of the events that would apply to your potential customer that are concentrated and kind of really start building the reach that Mark is referring to.
So now this is going to start looking familiar again. There's a device ID there, okay, related to that particular phone. Well, we can take those device IDs and we can export them out and load them into platforms that we want, okay? And then we can take those device IDs now that they've been exportable and we can load them into LinkedIn. And now they become part of our LinkedIn audience. We can load them into Facebook and now they become part of our Facebook audience. See where we're going, right? If you can capture the data that you know is relevant to the audience that you want or have, you can repurpose it in many different ways, okay?
It's very big, brother, I know. But it's the world we live in, right?
Yeah.
And if used for good, it can be very powerful for what you're doing.
And so it can actually go into any platform. You can put it in Google Display Network. You can put it into video platforms. The point is the data is transferable, right? And so you can use it in a lot of ways to benefit your marketing efforts, okay? And then once you've eliminated and exhausted the first-party data route, you can start looking to reach through third-party programs and so on.
Yeah, and this is kind of the realm of I consider what we've talked about today and what we are talking about today as the holy trinity of digital, really. Mobile, social, and targeted display. So what we're going to finish with here is some examples of how you can utilize targeted display. But this portion of it is probably the most familiar to all of you about how this can be utilized. But it's still managing an audience. And it's really delivering an ad throughout the internet, and you're putting guardrails around an audience that you'd like to reach, so much so that you've curated essentially an entire list of places that they like to go. In this case, Wall Street Journal. It doesn't have to just be a national publication where you're advertising and the people you want to reach are in Portland, and what about everybody else in the country, right? In this case, we can reach those people reading the Wall Street Journal just in Portland. So we can get very specific to a point where, again, it's very efficient and very little waste. The other thing that we can do is create either a custom list These lists exist that we can also modify that we call audience networks, and they're made up of websites that people go to that would fit the type of audience that you might be looking for. So what is the audience on the top of this? I can't read. Oh, it is real estate. Well, surprise. So this is a real estate audience. Now, this is just a sample site or a sample page of the sites that these people are likely to go to. We know this through data because we've been doing this for years, and we've accumulated the data that gives us the feedback to know which sites to build these networks with. That being said, there's probably a lot of sites that aren't on here that you guys might believe that this is where my clients are going. This is where my customers are going. We customize them. We add those sites in. As we're looking at performance of how these networks work, we're optimizing. We're constantly managing that audience to get rid of anything that's not efficient and constantly putting the effort towards those things that are.
Yeah, but some publications are representative of an audience themselves. Like Tony said in the beginning, if you put the letters out there, KXL, radio, you know the audience we're talking about, right? Or Kink, you know the audience we're talking about. Same thing with Wall Street Journal. You kind of know who the audience is, and sometimes you can use those publications as a proxy for the audience that you actually want to reach.
And then this is really the place where you're probably most familiar, right? This is true third-party data. We're making a lot of assumptions here, right? That we're trying to find people based on their behavior on the internet, because we know every computer's got behavior history on, and cookies, and all of that. We know what you're doing, and because of that, we can base audiences based on behavior, right? So we can find the people. Well, two benefits, right? The user receives a message, and it's related to their interests. Those are you. That's you as a consumer just going through the internet, and then the advertiser, also you potentially, are targeting ad dollars. People are interested for products and services, right? So you're targeting people, and you're giving your ad the most likely chance to be in front of those people that are truly interested. Now, of the three that we've talked about, right? This is the third tier, right? Now this is really where we're talking about reach. The first two, first-party, social, mobile, that data, very specific. You guys gave us that data, right? This, we're inferring a little bit more, but it allows us to create a much bigger audience to backfill the stacked audiences we're already managing to really create a holistic campaign.
By the way, you see those buckets there. Those are some of them related to commercial real estate, okay, that are available. Everything is pre-packaged now, right? There's 25,000 behavioral targeting buckets, and relevant to you, those are the ones that you could access. So the process, right? You don't have to know digital so long as you know a process or have a process to follow. In the same way you go about planning a buy or thinking about how you want a buy to be executed is the same way a campaign manager actually thinks about these things, right? And that's an important thing. It sort of keeps everybody on the same page. So when we talk about audience management, what we're really doing is just talking about stacking your audiences up and building your reach and building your reach. So long as you keep stacking it up, you take it as far as your budget will take you, right? You can only reach so many people, and you've got only so many dollars. So if you're going to use it, the more relevant you can stay to the audience you know, the better off your campaign is going to be without just getting in that spray and pray mode and so on, okay? Using the data becomes really the key to the whole thing. The data insights and so on that you have back, that's intended to actually improve your messaging. Building the audience, once you've done it, it's kind of done, right? Then it's about how do you engage those audiences beyond that. And that really is the next stage of it, is developing the message and so forth. Then it's a test-learn process, right? That's really what makes digital useful, is the ability to have feedback coming in all the time, but you got to use that data to actually begin to make those going forward decisions. But once you do, the campaigns just improve their performance over time.
Yeah, digital doesn't need to be scary, right? It's just the holy trinity. We know that they're on their mobile phones, right? We know that they're on social media, and we know that they're searching the web. So those are the most obvious places to be in order to capture these people and really get your message across.
Before we take questions, Tony and I are going to sing a duet up here for your
soft-
entertainment.
And a little soft shoe, right? Yeah. Yeah, we don't know unless we try. Let's do it on our team.
Right. We appreciate your time. Any questions you have, we're glad to stick around and answer.
Thank you. No, go ahead. Oh, did we had somebody go for it?
Just a quick question for you. LinkedIn, I kind of go back and forth whether or not I should go for the paid package or the free package. What are your thoughts on that? Are there any, is there any thing that I should be worried about that I'm missing out on if I don't go with the premium package?
Yeah, you know what? It depends on the extent to which you want to invest your money in LinkedIn, right? I find, what we find is, and Tony touched on this, the audience you need is already coming to your site typically, and extending from that is useful. And LinkedIn is clearly going to be a good place to be. I'm a big fan of their B2B capabilities and so on. It's just I kind of like the ability to move the money around into different places. So we typically don't go the paid route. We typically use the resources that they make available. The thing I'd encourage all of you to do is take a look at Facebook as a targeting mechanism like you're using LinkedIn. I'm floored at how good their data actually is in pursuing a similar engagement that you can get on LinkedIn as well, right? So if you're getting good things happening out of LinkedIn, that's a good thing to do. You could invest deeper, but I'd probably, encourage you to spend money elsewhere too, just to test, learn, figure it out, and so forth. But you can spend a lot of money on those, and their job, obviously, is to keep as much of your money as they can and keep you investing deeper and deeper. But you can repurpose that data in multiple ways and sort of extend your reach as a result. Okay.
Yeah, Mark, I was just actually wondering, Amy and I were talking, and we were talking about that geofencing stuff, and I was wondering if I could geofence my kids and
Yes,
have
you
like
can.
Bible sales to anyone that enters that geofence area or something like that. Questions?
Yeah.
I don't need a microphone. You guys got most of us to engage in that old-time method of data collection, which was supplying our business cards, which will now, I'm sure, end up on a mailing list somewhere.
I already emailed you.
So watch for it. But we were kind of discussing geofencing related to Facebook, kind of connecting you and then suggesting, based on that phone ID, somebody that you came into contact with or somebody that I walked next to here today, all I'll see is like, hey, you might know this person. So just kind of wondering, did you guys polygon this building today?
Because we can go back 2 years, we can go back, do it. We'll have the same, right? But that's kind of the idea, right, is that you pick an area of interest. So you can think about the number of levels that polygoning can be effective, right? Every stadium in the country is polygoned. Home Depot, polygons, their locations. You ever been through Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond and you're getting ads on your phone while you're going through the store? You ever experienced that? It's becoming a very common practice and so on, right?
And they're targeted to you not just for Home Depot, but the area of Home Depot you're in. So they'll give you a lawnmower ad when you're in lawnmowers, and then Home and Garden, you've got a different one. It's crazy.
Yeah. So it just goes a long way, but the data can be repurposed for anybody who's interested. So you may be getting an ad this afternoon, and when you do, you'll know why. We use Uber Media is a good one. It's not related to Uber Taxi, by the way, right? Ground Truth is another one out of New York area. They're very good. The problem with them is that you need big scale against them, but it's certainly a worthwhile area to do if your audience size is big enough to manage towards, right? Yeah.
We're just kind of scratching the surface on digital marketing. A lot of people out here may not have the infrastructure within our companies, such as a digital marketing person.
Yeah.
How do you suggest we leave today and kind of get started?
Yeah, that's a great question. That guy right there. You're right. I mean, that's the biggest challenge you have actually is, time and attention. right? And you succeed only with time and effort to whatever the the area of business that you're focused on. And this is not directly related to what moves your revenue ahead on a day-to-day basis, but it's important to be out there. And so typically you want to outsource those kinds of things, unless you have the facility, the money, and the the content that requires somebody to be doing that every day. Outsource it. But I think when you look at an outsourced solution, it's really important to identify companies that are not focused on product, they're focused on process. There's just too much sale of product going on in digital with the hope or the silver bullet solution. It doesn't work like that. It's hard work, and it has to be done and organized so that there's a direction you're trying to get to, and people that know how to do that can be, I think, very effective for you.
Yeah, and if done correctly, it's a conversation you're having with that person, right? You're sitting down and you're sort of identifying the pain points, where you'd like to go, and then figuring out what can you do for yourself, right? Because some of this stuff you don't even realize you can do for yourself, and it doesn't cost you any money, right? That's what you want to know first, and then maybe you can do it for yourself, but you don't have the time to do it. There's the next level of how much do I outsource? And then there's a whole nother level of, how can we integrate not just this, but make it, again, I keep saying holistic, but a complete holistic approach, because digital is not siloed. These mediums, radio is a great example of a medium that is a reach medium, right? It reaches more ears than any other medium out there. And it drives search, right? So, and search, the reach medium, the awareness, that's all radio. Where you actually take action, that's all on the internet, right? So, so it's kind of identifying how to make it all work nicely together. Anyone?